a little bit of education because like I feel like I'm not there are a million people in the whiskey world, especially the whiskey tuber world, that know a lot more than me. So, but I feel like if you don't stop and kind of pause and talk about things that most people just take for granted, that people that are newer and people like me, you know, like I'm just learning about some of these things. So
Yeah,
one thing we wanted to do is like let's break down the initials. When people say NDP, what do they mean, Mac? And what is an
yeah.
NDP?
So I think for like the most simplistic purposes, I would say a business that sells whiskey, it doesn't distill itself. Straight from Google, but also it's a law firm. And I think that's the best way to put it. I started drinking whiskey right out of college, like kind of seriously, not just like old number seven, taking
Yeah.
shots. I started kind of get into it. So I was right in there right before the boom, in like 2009. And I took a little break. And I think for the purposes of this conversation, back when I first started really getting into it and looking at the bottles, there were limited choices, and most of them distilled their own whiskey. Now, I mean, if you don't know much about bourbon or you're just getting into it, right? How many bourbon options are there?
It's
So
yeah,
I
it's
think
overwhelming.
most of the
It's overwhelming.
yeah, yeah. So I think most of those are non-distilling producers. So they're buying whiskey from other distillers.
Yeah, so we got into like this discussion right with NDPs and non-distilling, and so Good Times, right? They're not making any of their own juice; they're getting it from other places, but they're doing something other than just what a normal like some NDPs, right? That's like all they do is they just source someone else's whiskey, they slap their name on it, and they don't really do anything else. Tim just said
Yeah,
something that's interesting too in the chat that I think we should bring up, which is Good Times is
yeah.
actually edging their way towards distilling. And if I never saw it, but you and I were talking earlier that you may have seen a little redneck distilling setup
Oh,
somewhere.
there's nothing wrong with redneck. I grew up. I'm a redneck here from a country part of Tennessee here. But Tim, our resident expert, or I think he's not saying it, but he's a good times. He works for them, even though he says he doesn't. Um, but he has a picture of the still. Tim and I, we got to take some time and go to a couple different distillers in Louisville, and he showed me the picture. So I think, if you have a still and you're certified, you can get your distilling license. So I think that's what Tim is talking about.
Yeah.
I don't want to speak for Tim, but I think they are starting to get into that. Yeah.
Yeah, and what they also get into that I want to bring up here is I think you can do a really good job of this is what's the difference when we're talking about whiskey that is finished versus whiskey that's flavored? Like again, getting back
Yeah.
to some educational moments. Like if Hack and Mack could teach some new bourbon drinkers, like what's the difference in finished and flavored?
Yeah. So you know what? I got it right here. It's like I'm prepared today.
Let's go.
So this is a
Oh, Starlight Peach.
flavored whiskey. So that means that they added, sweetener juice right to the whiskey. Okay. This Starlight Peach actually is a pretty good mixture. For the summer, if you want something different. I know some people hate on it, and I get it. I think this is my only in all of my bottles. My only flavored whiskey, and then I think from finished, you have Good Times all the way up to like Peerless, which this is a double oaked, which means they just put it into another barrel.
Yeah.
That's considered a finished whiskey.
Finish. Yeah, just move it around. I guess here's the thing too that's really interesting, right? And look, I don't want to start a debate because look, the Good Times folks, they were so good to us, but like say this blueberry brandy,
Yeah.
right? How much of that blueberry brandy residue was in the barrel, and how much one
Yeah.
of the things that Josh talked about that I thought was genius is that some of their finishes they wait until they get to some of those coldest days of the year, to dump their barrels because wood, when it's really cold, the science of it is it contracts. So as it heats up, that wood is going to expand and release more and more of those flavors and those tannins into the whiskey. So I mean, I don't know. Maybe most people knew that, like, and I'm the idiot, which that's usually about true. But like, I was like, wow, that's a really cool. Like, who would have thought of that? Well, Josh would think of that.
Yeah. And I think, I think Good Times, in the whiskey world, in some sectors of it gets some criticism for some of their finishes, which I get. You have purists, right? Like we heard Tim and I when we were at a certain company, he just didn't even, any finish, weird finish, anything,
Yeah.
he was like completely disrespected. And I get that, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
I, on the other hand, am like, I love great traditional whiskeys. You can tell
Yeah.
but also, guess what? I like having fun,
Yeah.
and I think Josh really does some creative stuff.
Oh, he's a genius, absolute genius. But also, I'll tell you this: I think you and I have the same problem. We just kind of like all whiskey.
It's like pizza.
Yeah, we just like it all. But yeah, I mean, here's the thing: is like, I'm not going to be a bourbon snob ever because I don't have that level of intelligence, nor do I have the knowledge level of some of these guys that have been doing it a long time. But I'm trying to learn. And I'm trying to get more experiences that I can then share with others because I think one of the things is like I'm going through these experiences pretty early and like I've been drinking whiskey since about 2018. So I'm pretty early where there's guys been in it for years and getting to go to a place like Good Times to me is like one of those like pinnacle things. And